This is a presentation of Northeast Streaming Sports. Good morning, everyone, and welcome to the Mac and Jack Sports Show, our Thursday show, where we have some great guests on. We're going to have a lot of topics to cover today. We're streaming live on Facebook, on YouTube. We're also on Instagram and Twitter. Please subscribe to the YouTube channel, Northeast Streaming Sports YouTube channel, for all the great NESSP shows. Our website is nessp.info. All the information on all the shows there, guests, bios, sports, stores, and links to those stores. I'm Mac, your host with your co-host. And I'm not going to say the other part that I normally say. I'm going to say New York State Boxing Hall of Fame inductee coming up soon. Going over local sports with special focus on the Northeast streaming teams from New York, Boston, and Philly. Good morning, Jack. How you doing?
Hey, good morning, Mac. Forgetting myself, wasn't that a wonderful ceremony yesterday, the Baseball Hall of Fame? You know what made it unusual very quickly, Mac? And I know you're going to get to it. It was held on a Wednesday afternoon.
Right?
Wednesday afternoon. It was a throwback to when we were kids, and the World Series was played, weekday afternoons.
Definitely. And, of course, Derek Jeter got in and did a great job with his speech about the Yankees and about playing for New York, like I knew he would. He's a very professional guy. Congratulations to Derek Jeter. Well deserved. And with the Yankee news, Jack, I got to bring up real quick. I mean, Toronto is just kicking the living, what out of us as Yankee fans. And they've dropped down to second place in the wild card playoff, the playoff race. And Seattle and Tampa Bay and Oakland, I mean, not Tampa Bay, but Toronto are right on their heels. So, I mean, Jack, you've been saying, don't worry. Yankee fans are worried.
Mac, no, what I said, Mac, all along, the Yankees are going to have to go down to the last game of the season to get the second wild card spot. That's what I've been saying all along. Okay? Stay the course. Toronto's going to pass the Yankees and easily get the first spot. Okay? What are they, a game and a half behind them? Now, they're easily going to pass them. Seattle and Oakland are going to basically run out of gas before the end. And it's going to come down to the last game of the season. The Yankees and the Red Sox, last day of the season, and the Yankees get that second wild card spot, and then they lose at Toronto in the wild card game. That's what's going to unfold. So I don't want to hear this stuff, you making it up like me saying, the Yankees, Jack said, are going to win the World Series. No such thing. I said in the beginning of the year, Yankees are going to have an 89-73 record and get the second wild card spot on the last day of the year. You want to know something? If they go 11-12 the rest of the year, they're 89-73, I think. So, the other teams behind them, Seattle's going to run out of gas. They're on a little bit of a surge. Red Sox are just like the Yankees, so. They're not going to pick up their level, or play that much. And the Yankees will barely get in the playoffs, lose the wild card game, and then it's a long off season, Mac. What's wrong with the Yankees? Complaints. And they're going to have to make some moves. You tell me what moves they can make at that point, in the off season, but they have to do something at that point.
It's very simple. You got to get some starting pitching, Jack. Very simple. I mean, I've said that all along. Good morning, Carlos. Glad to have you in this morning, having a cup of coffee with us this morning. We appreciate you coming in every day. So anyway, Jack, I think you're kind of rewriting history a little bit there, because you said you weren't worried at all. Yankees were going to be number one in the wild card. They would play maybe Boston, win that game at home, and then go on to play.
You're correct. When you're riding high,
right,
you're thinking of all these grand plans, like the stock market. When the stock market's going great, you're thinking what you could do with your money. You're thinking, I'm kind of due for vacation. We have a little extra money, but then it falls back. I'm a big believer. You have to stay the course with a team over the full season.
Sure.
If you predict them to do something, you have to stay with them. But you're going to have rough patches where they're going to lose 9 out of 10 games, and you're going to have to wonder and question yourself as well. But now that we're at the month of September, the Yankees are barely going to get in the playoffs. The Mets are frustrating, Mac. Frustrating, losing to Miami yesterday. And the games, some of these close games they've been losing. I mean, that's the difference maker. So if I'm a Met fan, if I'm a Yankee fan, I'm angry. If I'm a Met fan, I'm extremely frustrated.
I'll give you that. Good morning, David. Glad you could bring us in. Yeah, Dave, we talked about Jeter, about him getting the Hall of Fame and the Yankees' woes. Let's turn to, of course, the biggest news today. Football season starts. You got the Cowboys versus Tampa Bay. Cowboys are over a touchdown underdog. Zach Martin, their all-pro guard, isn't playing. Dak is coming off an injury to his foot, a major injury, plus a shoulder injury during the preseason. Their defense was terrible last year. And Tampa Bay's getting their whole team back, Jack. I mean, what is your opinion on this game? I think personally, Tampa Bay is going to put it on Dallas tonight. What do you think?
I agree completely. I don't think it's going to be close. I mean, how about we say 33-13 and Dallas gets a late touchdown? Look, Dak Prescott was out a good part of last year, hasn't played in the preseason. What do they think? He's going to play opening game and he's going to light it up? And the Cowboys have issues, and their issues are always covered up by the name of the Dallas Cowboys. And, it's more Tampa Bay is ready to go. All systems are there. Everyone came back. They're committed to winning another championship. Tampa Bay doesn't need a couple of games to warm up and ease into the season. I mean, they're ready for destruction right now. Dallas, it's the kind of thing, they're getting their guys back. We don't know, is Zach Martin allowed to play? Their great guard. Because the question was no, but Jerry Jones all along was saying he thinks Zach Martin might be allowed to play.
He's definitely out.
Definitely out. Yeah, I thought it might be a game time even decision with the NFL. And that offensive line, had a lot of difficulty. And without Zach Martin in there, I just think it could be borderline ugly. But let's say Tampa Bay wins by about 20 points. And it's going to be a reality check that Dallas really isn't that good a team and might not. And there's a good chance they're not going to challenge for the NL East title.
Well, I won't go that far because it's a long season. Once Dak, if he is healthy, he gets his stuff back to him. The defense improves under the new defensive coordinator. But as you said, I mean, Tampa Bay is ready to go right now. Dallas is not. Maybe in middle season, end of season, maybe it'd be a different game. But right now, it doesn't look like it's going to be very good, especially with their defense, Jack. And they have so many question marks on their defense. Brady now has a full season under his belt with, Tampa Bay's style of offense. So, I mean, all the arrows look really down for Dallas, and look up for Tampa. I wouldn't be surprised if Tampa beats them by at least 2 scores. I mean, by 14 points or more.
I mean, when you look at the Tampa Bay roster, I know the Cowboys, for example, have great receivers in Cooper and Lamb, but I could argue that Tampa Bay's receiving corps are better. Antonio Brown, Mike Evans, Chris Godwin, Rob Gronkowski, tight end, and just, you talk about Ezekiel Elliott. We don't know how he's going to bounce back for the Cowboys after having an off year last year. But you look at the running backs for the Buccaneers, Leonard Fournette, Ronald Jones. They got Giovanni Bernard from the Bengals. And then you look at their defense. I mean, their linebacking crew, Jason Pierre-Paul, Shaquille Barrett, Carlton Davis at cornerback. I mean, it's like, they're loaded. A number of these guys are going to make the all-star team. And you know, and a lot has to do with attitude, Mac. They're the defending Super Bowl champs. When you're the defending champion, there's a certain pride you have, I think, and you want to hold on to that title. And I don't want to say you put out a little more, but you kind of put out a little more in a way. You don't back off. You don't want to give up what's yours. And the biggest problem Tampa Bay is going to face this year, Mac, is everyone is gunning for Tampa Bay because they're the Super Bowl champs. They're the big name ticket with Tom Brady. So every week a team is going to be up for Tampa Bay. Listen, tonight's game, if Dallas should be competitive, okay, just competitive, if they should lose a game, let's say 23-13, even by 10 points, hang in there, play a good game, my attitude is it'll be all right. I would breathe a sigh of relief if I'm a Cowboy fan because realistically, you really expect to win this game if you're a Cowboy fan. You hope you can win, but do you really think you're going to win?
If you're being honest with yourself, I don't think it's a winnable game. I don't think it's a winner. I mean, if I thought so, I'd be honest and say yes. I don't think this is a winnable game for the Cowboys. It's a very winnable game for the Buccaneers. So, backstage right now, Jack, we have our NHL expert, Carter B. Bentavanga. But Carter B is what we call him. It's easier to pronounce, and it rolls off the tongue with our NHL update. So let's bring Carter up. Carter, what's going on, buddy? Your mic, Carter, is it on? Check it out. Oh, there you go. Carter's gone.
Mac, if you're relying on me to carry the hockey segment, I mean, we might be struggling more than the Yankees are right now.
We'll continue with the football until Carter gets back. If he gets back, I do have some hockey news, but I'd rather go over it with Carter if he can come in. If not, I'll throw it in there near the end of the segment here. But everybody was talking about, Zeke's in great shape. He's thinner. He's in better shape than he was last year, that he looks faster. I would be surprised because what I think is going to happen is that Tampa Bay is going to jump out to a quick lead, and Dallas is going to have to throw. And I think that Zeke is not going to get that many carries. Well, here's Carter coming back in. Hold on, Jack. Let's see if we can bring him up. Carter.
Is this any better?
Yes, it is. You're not wearing your glasses today. I saw you backstage. I said, who is that backstage? Is that Carter? So Jack took off his glasses too.
Yeah, I got my contacts in right now. So,
all right. See, look at that. Carter doing the contact thing today. So Carter, of course, NHL season will be starting soon. And there are some, things that happen off season and when they're not playing. And I really didn't know how much happens in the offseason because I haven't been following hockey, honestly, for a long time. I just really started getting back into following it this year. And one of the things that happened in the offseason is they have a lot of tournament camp things that I was unaware of, where the prospects play each other and they have a tournament or teams play against each other. And the Detroit Red Wings, they have a prospect camp our prospect tournament coming up the 20th of September, so it's very soon. I guess this is where the minor league players go up against each other. And, they end up having games versus each other. What interest is that? First, I know hockey fans will watch it no matter what because it's hockey. But to the GMs and the coaches, how important are these tournaments and camps, Carter?
Yeah, I think they're extremely important. Especially for a team like Detroit, they're one of the younger rosters in the league. So, it'll give the general managers and coaching staff of Detroit a chance to kind of see, what young guys can make the jump to the NHL this year, and maybe what prospects have to wait for future seasons. So, it'll be interesting to see what happens with that. And I'm sure hockey fans will tune in. It won't draw as much attention as as say like the NBA Rookie League tournament will, but it's something. I mean, hockey. They got to try and grow the game a little bit more, and I think maybe a bigger rookie tournament like this would help. But it's definitely a start.
Isn't ESPN going to really promote the heck out of hockey this year? Because hockey is going to be given a much nicer platform.
I would hope so, considering they offered to put NHL games on their network for the next 7+ years. So, we'll have to see what happens with that. I mean, I'm hoping it kind of gets to a point where the NHL is at like the same point as the NBA. I don't know if that'll ever happen. I mean, the NBA is arguably the most popular sport in the world right now, but I guess we'll have to kind of wait and see what happens with that.
Well, the NBA seems to market players more than they do teams. Is that possible in hockey because of the nature of the game? Can we market individual players over their team?
I definitely think it's possible to do that. It's possible to do that in any sport. They just don't do it for some reason. So if I had an answer for that, I would give it to you, but I'm not a part of the marketing department for the league, so I can't give anything to you about that.
Well, Carter, I mean, when Gretzky was in his prime, of course, they marketed Gretzky. Messier was another big name that they marketed. There are some great players that they do market. But is that because there's no more great players? Or they're all very good or are good? Is there any player right now that you could think of that would be excellent to market no matter what region he's from?
Well, I mean, I don't think it's really fair to bring up the whole Gretzky and the whole Edmonton Oilers dynasty thing because no team in the salary cap era has won as many times as the Oilers have won in a short amount of time. I think Edmonton won like 4 cups in 5 years or something like that, and the only team that I can think of doing that would be the Blackhawks with 3 and 6 back in the 2010s. So. I definitely think there's a few players that you can pick out of certain markets and kind of put the spotlight on the market. But, again, it's really not my decision to do stuff like that.
So now when they have these, these tournaments or these camps, what do you think the coaches and GMs are looking for? Are they looking for somebody for future? Are they looking for somebody that could fit in their team, right away? I mean, is it? See, it's different than the minor leagues, even in baseball, and that's very comparable to hockey because they have the minor league system and they work their way through it. But the Major League Baseball really doesn't do this. They really don't have tournaments. I mean, they play each other during the season, but there's not where all the rookies go up against each other in a tournament. So this is pretty unique. So as a coach, is it more valuable to find that player that could come on maybe on a third line or something? Or are you just looking at the future as a GM or coach, Carter?
If the player's ready to make the jump, then they're ready to play in the NHL. I mean, if they're not, then you really don't want to force anything. The NHL is very different from other leagues like the MLB and the NFL because, you don't see many 18-year-old kids playing in those leagues, right?
Right.
You can play in the NHL at 18 years old if you're ready for it, if the coach thinks you're ready for it. So, I mean, I think it's a mix of both. I mean, if they can find a player who's ready for the NHL now, then, that's kind of an added bonus. But I think overall it's just worrying about the future.
Yeah, and the the Rangers have a camp too with 2 games scheduled against Flyer prospects, which is pretty interesting too. If you're a New York or Philly fan, you might want to check that out. That'll be coming up. It's the Rangers camp they have there. The Islanders have 2 more signings to make, Carter. Travis Zajac and Zach Parise. What's the importance of these 2 players to the Islanders this coming year?
Well, I'm going to start out with this. I think they're both already signed. I think that, the contracts just haven't been confirmed by the league yet. Parise's already been signed. He's confirmed that himself, but Zajac, we haven't heard anything about. I mean, the Islanders did what they had to do. know, that they re-signed all their Parisi and Zajac. They're just they're depth pieces. They're bottom 6 forward. I don't want to, I'm gonna sound harsh saying this, but it's not gonna matter if they don't, if they don't sign Zajac, right? I mean, so it's nice center depth to add a guy like Zajac. It's nice depth on the wing to add a guy like Parisi, but it's not gonna make or break your roster if those guys aren't on it come next year.
Yeah, because what I was reading that neither one of them were signed. What I read this morning, maybe they just haven't let it known. And I think it was Zach that had the uniform on and saying he signed and whatever. I think that's what I read too. The power play was not good for the Islanders last year, right? They were like 26th in the league, but when they had Anderson on the ice, they were 15th. How does one player make such a big difference in a power play, Carter?
Yeah, Anderson must be a new guy because I don't know who that is.
You don't know? Well, maybe I got the wrong name.
Well, the Islanders have a lot of young players. Do they have any one particular leader? Is one leader going to emerge this year? Because it seems like they have a very enthusiastic group, but you don't see like one guy who's the focal point who they would maybe rally around. Who might emerge as that leader of the Islanders this year?
I think they have a few guys who could do that. I mean, they have Anders Lee, their captain, Josh Bailey.
There you go. That's Anders.
Brock Nelson, some of these older veteran guys that that have been around the league before and that are poised to make these deep playoff runs. And the nice thing about well, I don't know how nice it is, but the Islanders are a team that has a lot of veterans on their team. So, these younger guys like Matt Barzal and Anthony Beauvillier can look up to these older players who have made these runs before and, kind of learn the ropes from them. So it's a nice mix the Islanders have, and we'll have to see if it can get them over the hump.
I think Jack saved me there. I had it Anders, but I ran into another name. So Anders is what I was talking about, Carter. When he was on the ice, they were 15th in the league in power plays. When he wasn't, they were 26th. So how does a player like Lee change the output of the power play when he's on the ice? They're so much higher than they are when they're not.
Yeah, I mean, Lee's a big power forward. I mean, he's going to go to the net. He's going to get in front of the goalie's eyes, make it hard, on him to see pucks. And, you mentioned the numbers yourself. I mean, the power play was a lot better when Lee was out there than when he wasn't. So, I think getting him back for the season is going to be big for the power play. And, they're going to have to step up again if they want to make another deep run in the playoffs. I mean, you're not going to make a deep playoff run with a power play that's bottom 5, bottom 10 in the league. So, yeah.
So explain to me and the people at home that don't, that aren't into hockey as much as somebody like you is that knows more. When the power play happens, when they get, whatever happens where the other team gets penalized and they got more players, can that team that's not penalized, can they put out a line that they want, or do they have to go with the same guys, Carter?
They can put out anybody they want. They just have to put out 4 skaters up until the penalty's over. So, but there are certain guys that the coach kind of knows that can kill penalties based on practice and other stuff like that. So, it's generally set units, but in reality, you can put anybody you want.
So if I had a guy that I knew was the better scorer on the team, and Anders is, as you said, is great at a power play, but if I picked up somebody, say in a trade or I signed somebody that was a real good offensive player, would that be somebody that you could just use for a power play, a power play that comes up during a game where you could just throw him out there on the ice when the other team's in the penalty?
Power play, I mean, I don't really think it matters. If you're on the penalty kill, then, I don't think you want to put a scorer out there unless they can play a solid 2-way game. So, yeah, I don't know. I mean, there's not a lot of instances where, most of the time it's, there's not a lot of times that a star player is seen on the penalty kill, to be honest with you. It's kind of like, gritty bottom 6 forwards. I mean, I can think of a few times where, where star players are on the PK, but overall they're generally safe for the power play.
And one last thing for you, Carter. So the Islanders have made it close 2 years in a row. I mean, they took Tampa to the brink this year. They were probably, I mean, if you want to go by the playoffs, you could say they were the second best team in hockey. I would say that. They took Tampa right to the brink. And the year before that, they took them, I think it was to Game 6. So they've been there close the last 2 years. Is there anything different that they can do? Is there anything as far as the way they play defense? I mean, the defense is great. There's no doubt about that. But is there any way they could improve their offense to get 2 more goals during a series and win it? Or is it just a matter of just staying the course and being better? I mean, there's got to be something the Islanders can do just to get over that little bump that happened to them in the last 2 years.
Anything they can do in the playoffs, maybe not run into Tampa would be a good option. But I don't know. I mean, I mentioned it before. I mean, Parise, he's a good depth signing, but I think he's going to bring a lot of offensive versatility to the Islanders' bottom 6, and he's going to shore up the third line. He's going to be pretty good, I think. Playing alongside with J.G. Pageau and one of Oliver Wahlstrom or Kyle Palmieri. So, I think overall they just got to play their game. I mean, they went all the way to Game 7 last year and they lost on a fluke goal in Game 7. So, I think this team's really close. I think the biggest hole for them is actually on their blue line. I mean, I think they got to fill the spot that Nick Leddy left, but if they can do that, I mean, I think they're in pretty good shape come next season. So we'll have to wait and see what happens.
All right, Carter, and one more thing, because I know you love the Rangers so much. What are your predictions next year for the Rangers? Can they make the top 4? Are they good enough to maybe pass Boston, Washington? I mean, are they that on the upswing, or is it going to be another building year for them?
I don't know. It's tough. I mean, I might seem like I'm coming off as biased. I'm really not. I don't think they make it this year. Not because of it's weird because I think the Rangers got a little bit worse this offseason. Sure, they added some physicality, but they lost some scoring power. And unless they can have one of their young guys step up and fill that role, it's going to be tough to get that scoring back. And they're also in an incredibly good division. I mean, you got the Islanders in that division, the Capitals, Pittsburgh, even Philly, who made some improvements to their roster. I don't think they'll make it either. But, I don't think the Rangers make it this year. I mean, if I had to put, 4 teams on it, I think Carolina, the Islanders, Washington, and Pittsburgh all make it. But, I mean, I have no idea, to be honest. The Metro's kind of, you kind of wait and see what happens because you really don't know who's going to finish where.
What happens if Jack Eichel could pass all his medicals and the Rangers do decide to make the blockbuster deal, give up, some of their good young talent for Jack Eichel? Does that change the equation? That would elevate them, in the short term at least, if they got a healthy Jack Eichel. Are they a playoff team perhaps then?
I mean, the problem is he's not healthy right now. He's going to miss time regardless of whether or not he's traded to the Rangers or not. I think that's the reason he hasn't been traded yet. It's because the whole situation surrounding Eichel in Buffalo, I mean, it's the fact that he hasn't been able to get his surgery yet that he wants. He's going to miss time throughout the course of the season, whether he's a Sabre or a Ranger. I don't think that really matters. So, I mean, if we're talking hypothetically, sure, it might make their roster better for a year. I don't think they'll go that far, even if they get Jack Eichel. I mean, they might lose in the first or second round, but I don't think Jack Eichel lifts them into like a championship contender. So, I don't know. I mean, again, it might seem like I'm being biased. I think I'm just seeing it from a hockey fan perspective over anything else. But I guess, people have to decide on that.
It is safe to say when you do your preseason predictions, you're not going to project the Buffalo Sabres as a playoff contender this year. That's safe to say, right?
Yeah. I don't think Buffalo's making it. So,
Jack. All right, Carter. Well, thanks for jumping in and giving us a little news and a little update on the Islanders and your opinions on the hockey camps and all that stuff. We appreciate having you in that every week, and we look forward to having you back in next week. You have a great day, Carter. Thanks for stopping in.
take care, guys.
So there you go, folks. Carter B., our hockey expert, joins us. Even though it's off season, we got to keep up what's going on there, Jack. But backstage right now, the busiest man in the business, Lance Meadow, on everything. He's been ESPN, Westwood One, Big Blue, Giants.com. He's all over the place, and he's gracious enough to join us today to kind of give an outlook on what's going to happen tonight and with the Giants. I mean, he's got all the answers. Let's bring him in. How you doing, Lance?
I'm doing very well, guys. How's everything with you?
Hey, Lance.
Everything's good, especially when you come in, Lance, and get enlighten us on all the Giants and NFL news is great. And we normally start you off with the Giants, but I want to get your opinion on tonight's game. Me and Jack were kind of talking about it. And of course, this is NFC East, repercussions come off this game. And we were discussing that Tampa Bay bringing back their whole team, Brady one more year under the system, and Dallas with their defense was awful last year. Their Zach Martin's out. Dak has coming off a huge foot injury, bad injury in the preseason, really hasn't got his timing down. I mean, is there hope for Dallas tonight? In your opinion, I know we're Giant kind of biased here, but honestly, in a football opinion, right, do you think Dallas even has a chance tonight?
Sure, absolutely. I mean, first of all, it's the first game, guys. So, I mean, I think you can't just assume that everything's going to continue and pick up where it left off last season. As good as Tampa Bay is, and I really like the Bucs. You don't see many times that a team brings back all 22 starters on offense and defense, but let's see whether or not they can duplicate what they did in the Super Bowl. Remember, the Kansas City Chiefs were down 2 of their starting tackles. Not to take anything away from Tampa Bay's defense, but that enabled them to rush really without a blitz. They brought 3-4 guys they won up front, and Patrick Mahomes had trouble all game long. You mentioned Dak Prescott hasn't played in the preseason. Well, I mean, keep in mind, Mac, he's still surrounded by the bulk of the talent that he's worked with over the last few seasons, and he knows this offense. Kellen Moore, the offensive coordinator, goes back to Jason Garrett when he was the QB coach. So I don't really think that continuity is an issue. I think the defense is certainly a question mark, but I like Dan Quinn. I like his track record, and I think Micah Parsons is going to have a really impressive season and make a significant impact. This defense, guys, keep in mind, it doesn't need to be a top 10 unit. They just need to get this unit back to the middle of the pack with the rate that offense can score. So, yeah, I think Tampa Bay and Dallas could certainly go toe-to-toe. Do I think the Bucs are the more talented team and the more balanced team? Absolutely. But when it comes to the early stages of the season, those first 4 games, I think all bets are off. You just can't assume that it's a continuation of what we saw last season. So, yeah, I think Dallas has an absolute chance to make some noise tonight. I don't think that's a stretch at all.
Okay. All right. That's why I love having you on, because we're just saying there's no way. I mean, Lance, when I look at Dallas, even when Dak was healthy, I mean, their defense, I mean, they had to score all those points. Their defense really hasn't got any better. I mean, Parsons is a rookie. He'll make some plays. But that defensive backfield, even the defensive line of Dallas that used to be, the doomsday defense, the history of that is unbelievable. They're nowhere close to that right now. I like Quinn, too. I agree with you. I think it's going to take some time, though, for both their offense and Dallas to keep going. If this was the middle season, Lance, I'd agree with you. I think Dallas would go toe-to-toe with them. But I just think that Tampa Bay is so together. They're, like you said, all the players are back. It's going to be tough for Dallas tonight. I really think so.
And I think with Zach Martin out, it's going to be a very conservative game plan with Zach Prescott coming off the injury. So I can't see, Prescott using his 2 big weapons, Lamb and Cooper, the way he would if he was in top form. So I just think and I think the Cowboys are going to be a little edgy in the sense that they just want to, keep Prescott healthy in the beginning. They don't know what to expect, if he's going to be really hit hard. So I kind of feel Dallas is going to have a real conservative game plan and rely on their defense to come up big.
Well, if it's a conservative game plan, they got Ezekiel Elliott in the backfield the last time I checked, Jack. So I really don't think.
And then Ezekiel Elliott, who didn't perform too well last year, he has something to prove.
Sure. Well, the reason why he didn't perform as he usually does is because the offensive line had major issues. You know, that's the other thing we didn't talk about. Zach Martin is a significant loss. Don't get me wrong. Connor McGovern is probably going to fill in for him. McGovern's been on the team the last few years, but they were also down guys, Tyron Smith and Lyle Collins. They're starting 2 tackles, which is what I brought up that Kansas City went through in the Super Bowl last year. To get those 2 guys back is huge for their ability to pound the football. And as far as Dak Prescott and the conservative approach, here's the bottom line. If Dak wasn't fully healthy and he wasn't able to run all the plays, then the Cowboys have no business putting him out there. So the fact that they're putting him out there means that he's more than capable of running their offense. That's not to say that I think Dak should be throwing the ball 40 some odd times. If he's throwing the ball 40 some odd times, it means Dallas is behind and they have to play catch up the whole game. And you certainly don't want to be in that position. But I don't think Dallas is entering this game and saying, well, you know, we've got to be very cautious of how many times we have Dak throw the football because he could get hit a few extra times. Listen, if the defense, based on what Tampa Bay lines out there, calls for a throw, you also have Michael Gallup, who you didn't mention. You got Blake Jarwin coming back from a torn ACL. They got a plethora of weapons. That's why I said the offense is not what concerns me about Dallas. It's the defense and also the ability of the offense to protect the football. Guys, what I think gets lost in translation from last season, they were plagued by turnovers on offense, and that put the defense in a very, very precarious spot. And you guys know it's sort of this symbiotic relationship. Your offense can help out your defense just as much as your defense can help out your offense. What was happening with Dallas's offense, they were turning the ball over. The opposition was taking over on the 50-yard line or closer. That's a lot to put on your defense. I think if they do a better job protecting the football, maybe they don't light up the scoreboard, but you at least put your defense in a spot that they can be comfortable early on and try to help you set the tone.
Agree 100%, Lance. So let's talk about the Giants, who are kind of opposite, right? Last year, the Giants defense played very well enough to win a lot of those games. The offense struggled a lot. And, you know, I think the Giants, you know, personally, and this is not being biased, I think the Giants have a real good shot of having a good year this year. But their biggest question is their offensive line, right? I mean, Saquon Barkley should get some action. I don't think they'll play him constantly, but he'll get some action. They got the receivers are upgrade. Their defense really hasn't lost nothing, maybe on the line a little bit, but their defensive backfield has gotten stronger. So they're going up against the Denver Broncos. A lot of people are high on the Broncos this year. Their defense, quarterback may be a question, but their defense, they think a lot of people think is going to be one of the best in the league. So with that being said, Lance, you're the Giants coach. You're Joe Judge. How are you going to open up the game? Are you going to open up throwing the ball with Daniel Jones, putting that pressure on him? Or are you going to just go ahead and try to pound these guys? Use that offensive line everybody says is a weakness and see what you can do against your defense at first.
Well, I think you want to take advantage of the variety of weapons around Daniel Jones. Remember, the X factor here, Mac, is Saquon Barkley. Yeah. And even though there's a good chance that he may play, given the fact that he's been on the practice field for the last few weeks, I don't know how much they want to throw on his plate immediately. So I think that gets back to your question. If you want to pound the football, you're going to probably have to utilize other running backs to help accomplish that feat. But just on the surface, you do not want to have Daniel Jones start airing that ball out against a very good Denver secondary. You mentioned the Giants secondary. The Broncos secondary has Kyle Fuller, who they just brought in, who knows Vic Fangio's defense from his days with the Chicago Bears. Ronald Darby is a polished veteran. I know he's had his ups and downs, but he's been in the league for some time. And Patrick Surtain they just drafted, and they're teaching him 3 different positions. So, you know, those 3 guys may be the main guys, but they also have Bryce Callahan, who they play out of the slot. And they got 2 really good safeties in Kareem Jackson and Justin Simmons. And this is not a game that I want Daniel Jones testing the Broncos secondary. I think you need to be more balanced. I do think you need to pound the football. And you could also involve your running backs dumping it off for 3 to 4 yards and see if they get some yak yardage. I don't think that's crazy. It doesn't need to be 25 legitimate runs. But, no, this is not the game that you want to be airing it out against a very good Denver defense that also has 2 good pass rushers in Von Miller and Bradley Chubb. Remember, you got to think about offsetting them, and the way you do that is I think you run the football, or maybe you involve short passes so that they can't get to the quarterback. They don't have time because, remember, in games when the offensive line was tested in playing from behind, That's where the offensive line struggled last season. Game flow, game situation is going to be very important for the Giants. It's not just about, here's how they match up against Denver. It's also how this game plays out. And if the Giants have to play from behind, that to me is a very advantageous position for the Denver Broncos to say, hey, Teddy Bridgewater can now run the football, can make good decisions, methodically move up and down the field, and we'll let our defense do a lot of the heavy lifting. And that's the position Denver wants to be in. So playing with the lead, I think, is going to be very significant for the Giants on Sunday.
Yeah, Lance, you make a good point. They're not going to pound the ball with Saquon Barkley, at least not in the beginning of the season. Someone like Devontae Booker, I mean, they have to count very heavily on him. And even though the Giant offensive line on paper doesn't look too bad, Andrew Thomas, Will Hernandez, Nate Soldier, something has gone wrong the last year or two there. What is it, the chemistry or whatever? Because the personnel really doesn't look that bad.
Well, they've got a lot of youth on the offensive line, Jack, which is, I think, what you were alluding to. Remember, we forget Andrew Thomas, Shane Lemieux, and Matt Peart are all entering year 2. And all of those guys did not play every single snap last season. Remember, Lemieux took over second half of the season when Hernandez got COVID, and Matt Peart was rotating with Cam Fleming. And maybe rotating is not even a fair synopsis because, guys, he played only 15% of the snaps. That's nothing. In comparison, Andrew Thomas played 96% of the snaps. Think about that disparity. And you're probably going to see a lot of Nate Solder this season too, because as you mentioned, they're bringing back a veteran who's got a lot of experience. I think they want to take advantage of that. That's why I thought Nate Solder somehow finding a way to work out the contract, coming back was so important. You do not want to go into the season with 2 tackles who are only entering year 2. It's just, I don't think that's a smart, wise position. And they're not in that position because they have Nate Solder. As far as, what's going on with the offensive line? You don't have a lot of new faces because Nick Gates is still your center. The only new face is really Nate Solder, and Will Hernandez is going from the left side to the right side. I think what's good for this offensive line, and this really is critical for Andrew Thomas. Andrew Thomas, remember, he played next to Hernandez for the first half of the season, and then they threw Shane Lemieux at him. I think having stability at that left guard position this season is just as critical for Andrew Thomas's development. You want him to be next to the same guy working out chemistry because, you were somewhat alluding to that, Jack. Yeah, chemistry is important for the offensive line. You can't have a different left guard in, a different right guard every other game. How are these guys going to get on the same page? But I think what's going to be critical for this group, once again, is game flow. How much are they playing with the lead? How much are they playing from behind? Because that dictates play calling. If this is going to be a season where Daniel Jones is going to have to throw the ball 35 to 40 times, you could have a great offensive line. You could have a middle-of-the-pack offensive line. You could have a struggling offensive line. It's really not going to make a difference at the end of the day because they're going to be more predictable. The Giants are going to be put in positions where they have to throw the ball. It's going to favor the pass rush on the opposite sideline. They have to play with not necessarily a lead, but they have to be in the thick of things in games to be a much more balanced offense. And I think that will take pressure off of the offensive line this season.
What do you think, Lance, about, everybody's saying this is the year Daniel Jones, make it or bust. Everybody's saying that. And, I agree to a point that Daniel Jones has to step up. He can't turn the ball over. Maybe he's got to get rid of the ball faster. But I think that has a lot to do with play calling also. I mean, I think that, to get the ball out of his hands quick, he's got to get receivers that are open quick. And, I mean, I think it's all complementary to each other, as it should be in offense. It's all about execution. The question I got for you is Evan Ingram. I mean, to me, this is his year to prove. He's got all the talent in the world. He's got all the potential in the world. He reminds me a lot of Hernandez with the Patriots, a worse version of him, where he can run, he can catch, he can come around in reverses. He's a tremendous athlete. But for some reason, in the biggest points of the games, he drops the ball even when it's right in his hands. I don't know if it's concentration. I don't know what it is with him. But I really believe if Evan Ingram doesn't have a good year this year, or at least I don't hear he was all pro last year. That was nonsense. If he doesn't have a good year this year, I think he's on the block. I mean, especially when they got a lot of tight ends now. They got a lot of their tight end room is pretty deep, Lance.
Well, they have Kyle Rudolph, who they brought in, and they still have Caden Smith. And I think the reason why they brought in Kyle Rudolph is to help the red zone efficiency, which was a big time issue last season. They only scored touchdowns 46% of the time. And that's where, a guy like Kyle Rudolph could certainly come into play and be a significant factor. As far as your point about Evan Ingram, remember, he made the Pro Bowl last season. It was more of a product of the league than Evan's production. There were a lot of injuries at the tight end position, and he was really the last man standing. So I think that was a big part of it. It's a big season, Mac, simply because of the fact that he's in the final year of his rookie contract. I mean, that's why it's a big year, because even if there's not necessarily a future in New York, well, there's got to be a future elsewhere. So you remember, you're either auditioning for your own team to be brought back, or you're auditioning for the 31 other teams. So by default, it's a big league. It's a big year, because of the contract situation. As far as the reliance on him for the sake of the offense, I think you sort of answered your own question, because you said they brought in Kyle Rudolph. They have some other options. I think they're protecting themselves. And it's not just about production. It's also, remember, Evans now dealing with a calf injury. There's no guarantee he plays Sunday. And last season was the first year where he actually stayed healthy and he was on the field, which was extremely encouraging. Remember, with Evan, it's been two things. It's been execution, but it's also been durability.
Sure.
And last season, you got a taste of the durability. The execution fluctuated a little. Listen, they like him. I can tell you this. The coaching staff, Joe Judge, they value him. They look at him as a key component. I know Giants fans don't want to hear that, but that's the reality of the circumstance, okay? They're not going to bench him, nor should they. He is a talent. He is a nightmare matchup, especially if you don't have a safety or a linebacker that can handle him, because he's sort of a pseudo wide receiver tight end. So they're going to utilize him, and they're going to need him on the field. I think the key for him is in big spots, when Daniel Jones gets the ball to him, can he make the play to help move the chains? Evan doesn't need a monster season. Evan doesn't have to have a career year. I'm not going to go that far, but I think in moments where they're going to target him and look for him to make a big play, that's where you need him to step up. Because remember, the reason why they scored 17.5 points per game last season, yes, part of it was the lack of execution across the board, the red zone inefficiency, but also the inability to consistently come through with a big play in crunch time and in the red zone. And that's where a guy like Evan can come up huge, because once again, I don't think there's a lot of individual defenders that can match up well with him one-on-one. And that's another reason why he still has an extreme amount of value here.
Can Daniel Jones be more than just a game manager? Because he has a very nice group of receivers, in Galladay, Shepard, Slayton, Kadarius Toney, who's a great wild card, could be sensational. Who knows? I mean, even John Ross, maybe, he reaches his potential. Can he be more than – because if he's a game manager, those guys are wasted for the most part. Can he actually win games, Daniel Jones?
Well, first of all, you mentioned John Ross. This is what I have said every time John Ross is brought up. Let's see him be healthy for once, Jack, okay? The guy has not been able to stay on the field, and he's on IR right now. So when John Ross could prove that he could stay durable, then we could talk about what John Ross could do for the Giants offense. This is why we can analyze paper rosters all offseason. It's fantastic. But if you can't get on the field, it's meaningless and irrelevant. So I needed to say that. My second thing is, I'm going to throw a question back at you, Jack. You say game manager, which is one of my favorite lines in football. Every quarterback is a game manager, okay? Because they have to orchestrate the offense and manage the game. So when you throw that out, no, Daniel Jones, the Giants can't look at him, nor should anyone look at him as a guy that can single-handedly win games. Because if Daniel Jones needs to single-handedly win games, Jack, you're back to what happened last season, which is when he has this mentality, I got to put the cape on, I got to be the superhero, and I make decisions that doesn't necessarily help the offense. For example, holding onto the ball a little bit too long and you get sacked, you lose the ball, not throwing the ball away. So I don't think he should have the mindset that it's all on me and that if I can't deliver, it's over. They can't operate like that. They need to operate where his decision-making is more of, it's okay to have a play where you throw the ball away. It's okay to take a sack if that's going to live and allow us to see another down. So to answer your question, I don't think Daniel Jones can enter this season saying, I need to play hero ball. He needs to play smart football. He needs to make good decisions that put the Giants in a position where they're not having drives stall because of turnovers, And they're also maybe trying to open things up a little bit with the deep ball because of some of the weapons they brought in that I think can be vertical threats and can extend the field. That's what he needs to be thinking. I don't think he needs to have the mindset that everything is on me and the only way we're going to win football games is on me, because they've got a defense and they got special teams, which is going to be just as crucial in terms of determining the outlook of this season.
Well, Liz, I'll piggyback what Jack said. I'll take it a step further. Listen, Aaron Rodgers, Tom Brady, Drew Brees. I mean, there's only a handful of them.
Sure,
they can put a team on their back, come from behind and beat you. I don't think Daniel Jones is that. Not yet, anyway. I don't know if he'll ever be that. But you don't have to be that to win in the National Football League. You don't need that. You don't have to be that big play guy. So I think if anybody's looking for Daniel Jones to be the next Aaron Rodgers or Tom Brady or Johnny Unitas or whatever, I don't think that's going to happen. I mean, unless I'm totally wrong. I think he's going to be more like, a quarterback that can take you to a Super Bowl, win it with a good team. That's what I think Daniel Jones is. He just, you got some quarterbacks, you got to admit, Lance, they'll come on in the league, and within the second year, you just can tell that these guys are special. I don't think Daniel Jones is that quarterback, but I think he's a Bart Starr. I think he could be, quarterbacks that can manage a team. What Jack means is make sure that the team, when he needs to make a play on third down or he needs to make a smart throw, I think he can do that. I think the kid is smart enough, physically strong enough, and he's sure athletic enough if he uses that too. So that's what Jack means, and I don't think that Daniel Jones will ever be one of those.
Yeah, and I think he's more than capable, Daniel Jones, of doing the things you just laid out. But, what I'll say is with those 5 or 6 quarterbacks that you were referencing, remember, what we learned in the Super Bowl is even Patrick Mahomes can't overcome issues up front. I mean, look at what happened to him, right? So that's why when game manager, game changer, X factor, whatever these labels are, every quarterback has limitations. That's my point. Sure. You can't just expect, even if you have Aaron Rodgers or Patrick Mahomes, you're not winning a Super Bowl, even if you have question marks up front, because they can only overcome it so much. So that's why what I'm saying is Daniel Jones can't have the mindset, if there are issues up front, where now I have to go above and beyond, because I think that's where quarterbacks, not just Daniel Jones, everybody gets into trouble. Can he help you win games? Can he put the offense in a good position? Does he have the skill set and the upside? Absolutely. But the defense and special teams is going to determine the outlook of the Giants just as much as Daniel Jones. I think when people have asked me this question, well, what do you want to see out of Daniel Jones? I'm not looking at it so much, it's got to be 9 wins, it's got to be 12 wins. You want to see from an individual production standpoint, you want to see him get back to his rookie year, 24 touchdowns, 12 interceptions. That's a very good ratio. Of course, you'd like to see that improve. But here's the other thing. If you're going to expect him to go from just over 10 touchdown passes to 30-some-odd touchdown passes, I think that's a stretch. And the reason why it's a stretch is how many guys have gone plus 20 in touchdown passes in the span of one season at the quarterback position? Josh Allen, who had a MVP-esque season last year, guys, went from plus 17 in terms of touchdown passes. He went from 20 to 37. Even he didn't make a jump of plus 20. So I think we got to be realistic in terms of Daniel Jones's expectations. But he could certainly have the ability to get back to his rookie form. He's just going to have to do that based on his decision-making consistently, not 1 or 2 good games and then 1 or 2 rough games. It's got to be even keel across the line.
You're preaching to the choir. I say that all the time. People don't realize this is a quarterback position is still a player-dependent position. He's still got to make sure everybody's.
I just want to say one thing. On the defensive side of the ball, I'm a big Blake Martinez fan, and I think this is the year. I don't want to say breakout year because he's been outstanding before this, but I think by the end of this season, when we talk about the best players in the NFL, defensively, Blake Martinez's name comes out all over the league. What do you think?
100%. I'm with you, Jack. Actually, I would go so far, if you were to ask me the one defensive player that the Giants can't afford to lose this season due to injury, I think it's Blake Martinez. He's the cleanup guy. He has been up there, as you alluded to, in terms of tackles amongst the league leaders for pretty much the last few years. I mean, he was top 5 in the NFL last year in terms of total tackles. And he's a big reason why they were effective in stopping the run. And I brought this up all offseason. if there's one guy that I think was extremely valuable that they lost, that I need to see what happens in the early stages of the season, it's Dalvin Tomlinson. And if you don't have big guys up front that are going to help you stop the run, you better have linebackers that can fill those holes and those gaps. And that's why Blake Martinez is so critical from that standpoint. So I'm with you. He's an extremely valuable component, and he's basically the extension of Patrick Graham on the field because he gets guys in the right position. So there's no doubt about it. Blake Martinez's durability and health is going to be huge in determining what this Giants defense could do.
Definitely agree. Lance, again, I want to thank you for coming in as you do once in a while, giving us all the Giants information. You know more about the Giants and what's going on there than anybody I know anyway. And, listen, if the Giants can improve from 6-10 to 9-8, I'll be happy. Just as long as they're improving. I'm not looking for them to win. Even though I think they can win the division if certain things fall right. I'm just hoping that they improve at least another few games. That'll give me some hope for the following year. And if they're competitive, that makes me happy too, Lance. So
Matt, very, very quickly, Lance, very quickly, my New York Jets, did they do the right thing trading Sam Darnold, getting Zach Wilson? Would they have been better off drafting Kyle Pitts and keeping Sam Darnold or going with Zach Wilson?
Well, if you ask Sam Darnold, he would say it's about time that they actually improve the talent around him. It's unfortunate that Sam didn't get to enjoy all of that. But as far as the right decision, Zach Wilson did look good in the preseason. And I like the fact that, unlike Sam, Jack, Zach is surrounded by an environment that I think can allow him to flourish. So, yeah, I think they did right by him by improving the talent. Now it's in the hands of whether or not Zach Wilson can capitalize. But the environment is far more attractive, what Zach Wilson has, compared to Sam Darnold.
And Darnold will have an outstanding year with Carolina this year. You watch, Lance.
Wow, look at that. Well, yes. We'll see. Something tells me Jack, though, is just going to be excited if Zach Wilson has a good season. I don't think he's going to lose too much sleep on Sam Darnold and the Panthers.
I want Sam to succeed, not just in week one. After week one, I want him to do well.
Yes.
So after they play the Jets. That's like a true gangrene fan. Yes. Well
there
said.
You go. Again, Lance, thank you very much. We appreciate you taking time out of your day to come visit with us. Always a pleasure having you on. Have a great day, and go Big Blue Sunday, man. Go Big Blue.
Thanks, guys. Appreciate it. Always good coming on. Take care.
Take care, Lance. So there you go, folks. The great Lance Meadow, the busiest commentator in the business. He's on everything. For him to make time to come on just shows what kind of relationship we got with him, Jack. He really enjoys coming on.
A great guy, very knowledgeable. I'm always learning football when he's on the show. Always.
Yes, I mean he brings us back to the truth, which is football will always be a team game, not an individual sport. And a lot of people got to be reminded of that when we start talking. I know fantasy football is big, folks, but listen, that's not reality. That's why it's called fantasy. Folks, we're going to be right back after these messages. Stay with us. We got a lot more stuff coming on. We've got a lot more sports to get to. We got a boxing author coming up around 9:30 that Jack knows pretty well. So that should be a great interview too. So we'll be right back right after this, folks.
If you talk and they will hear you every single time.
No, we're getting killed.
Yeah, well, Kyle's not here.
How come?
Kicked off the team. Didn't Tim tell you? Kyle and some other kids got caught drinking beer in the park a couple of nights ago.
Really?
Yeah. 0 tolerance. He's out for the season.
Come on, it's the first offense, right?
That we know of. But why should that matter? He knew not to drink. I've made it clear to Matt that's what we expect from him. What have you said to Tim?
Nothing really. You know, a lot of kids try it at this age, so.
Yeah, well, a lot of kids don't try it too. I'm not saying that Matt's going to be this perfect kid, but if I don't tell him what we expect and why he shouldn't drink, how's he going to know?
You think kids that age really listen?
They never admit it, though, but they hear more than you think.
Talk. They hear you. For more information about talking with kids about underage drinking, visit underagedrinking.samhsa.gov.
If you served honorably in our nation's armed forces and you're looking for a way to continue serving your fellow veterans in your community, then join AMVETS. Each year, AMVETS members volunteer millions of hours at VA healthcare facilities from coast to coast, helping to improve the lives of their fellow veterans through the VA Voluntary Services Program. AMVETS posts and departments also participate in a wide variety of community service projects, ranging from Americanism in our schools to supporting the Special Olympics and Boy Scouts of America. If you no longer wear the uniform today, you can still serve through the AMVETS by joining today at amvets.org.
Hi, Grandma. What's for dinner?
Hey, honey, I'm making stew tonight.
Ooh, can Nina come over?
I'm not sure about our new friend. I wonder if there's been any drinking going on. Alcohol at her age can lead to so many bad things. I've been meaning to ask you, what would happen if someone offered you a drink?
Grandma?
This is hard. She's so young, but I know I need to talk to her about it now before someone tries to give her alcohol. If anyone ever does offer you a drink, I want you to say no. I have too much respect for my family, and I don't want to get in trouble.
Okay.
Really?
I promise, Grandma. I love you too.
Okay, how about tasting this stew and telling me what you think?
Some children may try alcohol as young as 9 years old. It's not too early to talk about drinking. For tips on how to begin the conversation, visit underagedrinking.samhsa.gov. That's underagedrinking.samhsa.gov. This message brought to you by SAMHSA and this station.
When you hear the word asthma, you probably think of shortness of breath, coughing, or inhalers. Lots of things can trigger asthma, but the fact is that asthma doesn't just attack, it can kill. But with proper medical management, asthma is controllable. If you experience shortness of breath, wheezing, tightness in your chest, or persistent nighttime coughing, you may have asthma. See your doctor and get the facts. You'll breathe easier. For more information, call 211 Infoline. A message from the Connecticut Department of Public Health, keeping Connecticut healthy.
Good morning. You're listening to the Mac and Jack Sports Show on Northeast Streaming Sports.
Good morning, everyone, and welcome back to the Mac and Jack Sports Show. We're live on Facebook and the Northeast Streaming Sports YouTube channel every Thursday through Sunday, 8 to 10 a.m. So if you're watching right now, that's what we'll be. And when we share the show later, we'll remind you that, of course, you'll see this. And if you want to join us for a cup of coffee in the morning, we start off Northeast Streaming Sports Network every morning, Thursday through Sunday. I'm your host, Mac, with your co-host, New York State Boxing Hall inductee Jack Hirsch, and well worth that honor, and I know eventually he'll make it into the big one too, Jack. I'm very positive of that for all the work you've done, and I know you're.
I lived 100. I got a shot at going in at 94, yes. 95, 96. By that point, all the young guys would have seen. I've been around forever, so. That would give me a chance. And so many more people would have been put in by that point. They'd be running out of people, the International Boxing Hall of Fame.
Yeah.
That would give me my best chance.
It'll come down between you and one of the Paul brothers, those E.
Oh, yeah.
So I think you'll get the nod over them, Jack.
Listen, there was controversy when Sylvester Stallone went in.
Yeah.
That was a very healthy debate. Should he have been inducted into the International Boxing Hall of Fame? And I felt he should have, based on all the Rocky movies, what he meant for the sport. I really thought he should, but there was a debate both ways.
Sure. I mean, listen, I could see it both ways, Jack. I mean, he really wasn't a boxer, but the amount of popularity for the movie, of course, that had to cross over into boxing, people interested in boxing. That had to be, I could see it either way. Maybe in the Philadelphia Boxing Hall of Fame, if there's such a thing, I imagine there is. Maybe that would have been a better choice, but I think that's not a bad choice either.
Well, they have the Pennsylvania Boxing Hall of Fame.
There you go. Pennsylvania.
Yeah.
This is a state, yes. But Philly is where the fighters come from. We all know that, Jack. So, Jack, every week we have our Wall of Fame. And we're on the baseball part of the Wall of Fame again as we go back and put newer people in there. Our latest one was Joe DiMaggio. Joe DiMaggio was our latest Wall of Fame inductee. This guy, there's no doubt. Ted Williams, the last 400 hitter in baseball history. Lifetime 344 on base, lifetime average. On base percentage, almost 500%, Jack. 2-time triple crown winner. 6-time batting champ. 4-time home run leader. 9-time All-Star. 2 MVPs. Hall of Fame in 1966. 2,641 hits. 521 home runs. And 1,839 RBIs. Not to mention, he was a war hero, Jack. And if he wasn't in the war, he might have got up to 600 home runs, drove over 2,000 RBIs, and maybe his lifetime batting average would have went up, Jack. I don't know.
Oh, absolutely. And he went out in style. His last at-bat, he hit a home run at Fenway Park. When I think of Ted Williams, I think of the gutsiest move perhaps a baseball player ever made, okay? He could have sat out the last game of the season when the Red Sox, the last 2 games, when the Red Sox were playing a doubleheader on the last day. He was hitting like 401, and most people would have sat out. Look, many years later, Jose Reyes sat out to protect the batting title. But Ted Williams insisted on playing. He insisted on playing the doubleheader. He wasn't protecting his 400 batting average, and he goes 6 for 8. 6 for 8 in the doubleheader, winds up at 406. I mean, Ted Williams, the biggest student as far as hitting goes. He was a war hero. He also was at war with the media. Didn't always have the greatest relationship, was said to be surly, didn't have much patience. And Ted Williams really was never reportedly known to be one that would apologize. If he got into an argument with someone and they was friends, he would come around to their room late and say, "You're ready to go out to dinner?" That would be his way of saying that he was sorry. But what a hitter. You know, the one thing that Ted Williams could never settle in his own head, and he talked about it after he was retired, and it would be a big issue today, these teams that put on the shift against the play, especially a left-handed batter, he always wondered, you tried to hit against the shift, hit through the shift. Ted Williams was so good. He always found a way, for the most part, to beat the shift. But maybe the best natural hitter, you know, in Major League history, arguably.
Yeah, I mean, if you think about it, I don't know any better hitter. I mean, you could put maybe Rod Carew in his class and maybe Stan Musial. I mean, but to hit the way he did, especially being a left-handed hitter in Fenway Park, where, you know, if you didn't go down a pesky pole, it's hard to hit a home run out of right field in Boston. It's more easier to get over that green monster. You know, and he really didn't go the other way. Like Carl Yastrzemski got a lot of hits off the wall, right? He could go the other way. Ted Williams is definitely a pull hitter. I mean, and what he did is unbelievable. And if he didn't have, I don't know how many years he was in Korea. I didn't look that up. But and he was a fighter pilot, Jack, if I'm correct. So it wasn't like he was sitting at a desk, you know, pushing paperwork. He was in the action. And for him to come back and continue his career and do what he did is just unbelievable to me. I mean, there aren't too many people that could go and be in the thick of a war, because I know a lot of veterans that were in the thick of it and they're never the same again. To come back and to continue on his great career, I mean, there's something to be said about that, Jack.
Yeah, and you mentioned Rod Carew, who won 7 consecutive batting titles. Rod Carew, as great a hitter as he wasn't as good as Ted Williams, because Ted Williams hit for power. And to put it in perspective for recent fans, the Red Sox had a great designated hitter all the years, and Big Papi David Ortiz, who next year is going to be eligible for the Hall of Fame, who's, you know, should get in his first year of eligibility. If Big Papi and Ted Williams were together at the same time and one of them had the DH, Ted Williams would be selected as the DH over Big Papi. with a little room to spare. That's how great Ted Williams was, with a little room to spare. But Ted Williams' weakness was this. He wasn't interested in playing defense. He wasn't interested in running the bases. He just loved to hit. He would study hitting unlike any other hitter. And the DH role would have been perfect for him when he played, but they didn't have it. That was the thing about it. So Ted Williams was forced to play the outfield, but Ted Williams would have been very happy just grabbing a bat and hitting. And imagine if he could only DH, as great as he was as a hitter, if he only could concentrate on DHing, he may have actually been a little better. And people compared him and Joe DiMaggio, so much. Different type of players, because Joe D was great defensively. Ted Williams was the better hitter of the two. And, and the Boston Red Sox, they could never quite beat the New York Yankees that year. Would that have elevated Ted Williams up? Perhaps a little. But at the All-Star game, Mac, a lot of years later, all the players gathered around Ted Williams, all of them. Their reverence was unbelievable. So think of that. The elite were gathering around the biggest elite player that was living at that time, Ted Williams.
Yeah, I mean, if you think about it, Jack, Ted Williams had a way with the bat and a way with the ball. I watched him. He would shave his bat. He would get it right. He studied the spin of the baseballs. They said his eye, he could pick up a curveball almost right off the guy's hand. The sight that he had there was better. So what they said was better than average, a lot better than average. Great eye, great swing, took care of his bat like it was his best friend. I mean, this guy was, as you said, so much into hitting that, even the video I watched of this guy, it was unbelievable.
Around 1990, Pete Rose was talking about the old timers compared to the modern guys. And he was saying, look, the old timers were great in their day, but the way baseball has changed, they couldn't compete. They couldn't be nearly as good if they played today. But then he said, but Ted Williams would have been every bit as good today as he was in his time. He's an exception to that rule. So he said Ted Williams would have continued to be the best hitter in the game if he were playing today. And that's the one guy, it was interesting, that Pete Rose gave a complete pass to.
Well, I'll tell you, Pete Rose, I think, is wrong on that, because I think there's a lot of players that could have played in the same time he did and would have been better than Pete Rose, sorry to say. So anyway, that's his opinion and I have mine. So let's talk a little bit about the MLB. I mean, we got the games coming up Sunday. We got all week to talk about them. And Sunday, folks, is our big NFL show. So tune in for that. We'll have great guests on there, and we'll break down all the games and talk about them in depth. And tonight, me and Jay McLovin will be on Top Picks, and we'll break down the spreads in tonight's game also. So tune in. It'll be 6 p.m. Eastern tonight, where me and Jay will do that. We did pretty good on the college, and I think we'll do well in the pros this week too. So in the standings in the MLB, since we're talking about baseball, Jack, there's no way that the Rays are going to – I don't care how much time is left. They're just too good. They're going to win the division. As I said, the Red Sox have passed the Yankees for the first place wild card. The Yankees are in second right now with the Blues.
Toronto's going to pass them both, so let's –
They might.
Let's not be concerned with the position right now. Toronto should beat the Yankees today. They'll be a half game behind the Yankees. They're going to finish ahead of the Yankees. Yankees and Red Sox are going to battle for that last spot.
I'm not so sure. I'm not so sure. The Mariners are hot as hell, Jack. The Mariners are playing unbelievable.
That means they're due to cool off.
Well, we'll see. We'll see about that. I don't know. I'm not as optimistic as you. The A's are still in it. Only one game behind the Rays, and the A's could turn it around too. They've not been playing their best.
They're one game behind the Mariners, you mean?
Right behind
Seattle.
Behind the Seattle. So I mean, it's a 5-team race for the wild card, Jack. There's no way anybody's going to catch the White Sox. There's no way they're going to catch Houston. I don't care if they're only 5 games behind. I think Houston's just too talented. So 5-game race for the wild card, which is kind of exciting, right? I mean, that's going on. The Braves in the National League have increased their lead over the Phillies, who keep losing tough games. You talk about the Mets. The Phillies, what a play by that shortstop. I try to remember who they played against last night. I don't know, it was San Diego or some other team. I forget. But the play that he made ended up causing the Phillies to lose. Diving play made by the shortstop. But the Phillies are still in the thick of things over there. The Braves in first. The Mets are like 4 games behind the Braves. You got the Brewers. They're not being caught. They won again. They're just a solid team. There's nobody going to catch them. Cleveland doesn't have a chance. The Giants have increased their lead to 2 games over the Dodgers. The Dodgers keep on coming up, Jack. The Giants keep beating it back down again. So really great season by the Giants.
Giants have been phenomenal. That's the big story. I'm rooting for the Giants. I'm not a Giant fan, but I am rooting for them to come in first place. With the season they had, it would feel nearly criminal if they somehow slipped into second and then they lost the 1-game playoff. It would be absolutely awful. The Giants, they really earned their position. Every time the Dodgers come up on them, they hold the Dodgers off. Yeah. And we have about 3 weeks in the season left. And listen, it's going to go down to the wire. And as far as the Dodgers have went, they've had a terrific season. Yeah. It's just that the Giants have been a tiny bit better to this point. And imagine the Dodgers have to play a 1-game playoff. Yeah. I mean, it's dangerous. The Dodgers could be playing San Diego in a 1-game playoff. That is darn dangerous.
Great point, Jack. I mean, San Diego is a talented team. In 1 game, they could beat anybody. And, and same thing with San Francisco. By chance, the Dodgers take over first place. I'm not guaranteed San Francisco could beat San Diego in 1 game either. I mean, they got so much talent on the team. They've been hurt. Their season hasn't gone what everybody expected. But heck, they're tied with the Reds for the first wild card. And I think they're going to get in. I don't see any other team passing. The Cardinals lost last night. I don't know. I think the Cardinals made their little move, and that's it. I think they're done. But
it changes quick. These teams that are 3 games behind, all they need is a little spurt over a few days, and everything changes.
Very, very true. But I just think San Diego is so talented for 1 game. They can definitely put it on any team in the league. So the Dodgers it would behoove the Dodgers to win that division. I wouldn't want to face San Diego in 1 game.
They throw Blake Snell at them for 1 game, and Blake Snell is in top form. I mean, it's going to be big trouble for whoever might face San Diego in the wild card game. But San Diego still has their work cut out for them. I think they're 1 game ahead of Cincinnati, if I'm not mistaken, for that position.
The games are even. They just have played, I think, 2 less than the Cincinnati Reds right now. So that could go either way. But so, Jack, if San Fran does become the wild card team and Dodgers take first and San Diego beats them in that 1 game, is it a successful season for the Giants?
It's obviously the Giants would have had it's a wildly successful season, but it would be a wildly disappointing season considering how great the Giants have been. The Giants have been phenomenal. The only way what I'm saying doesn't apply is, let's say over the next couple of weeks, the Giants all of a sudden suffer a collapse. They lose 11 out of 13. Then it's kind of on them. But if the Giants are playing really good ball the rest of the way and then the Dodgers get hot and somehow overtake them, but every time we think the Giants are going to hit a little bit of bump in the road, they don't. Yeah. They don't. They steady the ship. It's just been one of those unique years. You know what? You know what it is? Why it's so important for the Giants this year? Because next year, unlike the Dodgers, we know the Dodgers are going to be good next year. Their personnel is too good. They have the money. They're going to make the moves. But if you look at the Giant roster is good, but it doesn't quite seem to measure up to the Dodger one as far as talent goes. And as far as moves they could make in the offseason, I know the Giants had a great move. They got Chris Bryant from the Cubs, for example.
Right.
But it's kind of like, I think, very important that the Giants win. Now, look, if the Giants win the division, the Dodgers get in as a wild card, the Dodgers win the wild card game, the next round would actually be Dodgers against Giants, okay? Because the wild card winner plays the team with the best record.
Right.
The Giants could conceivably lose before they get to the National League Championship Series, but that wouldn't be so bad if they lost to the Dodgers in the first round in the series like that. It would really be bad if the Giants somehow slipped out of first and lost the wild card game.
So take the Dodgers in the same scenario. They get the wild card. They play San Diego. San Diego beats them with all the money they spent, all the All-Stars they get. What would the Dodger fans think?
Major disappointment. Major disappointment. That'd be finger pointing. Of course, it would start with Trevor Bauer. And regardless of what happens with this case, Dodger fans, the Dodger organization wouldn't want to see him again, because the thought was, well, if you kept your head straight and didn't get into this difficulty, and we're not saying he's guilty, but he has gotten into a bit of a jam that really should have been avoided, whether he's guilty or not.
Right.
He should have been pitching for the Dodgers, is going to be their logic, and he kind of let them down, was in the plans. And Dodgers would make some bold moves. For example, David Price, when they signed him as a free agent years ago from Boston, they're going to be moving on from him, and they're going to make a major offseason acquisition. I mean, they're going to see what's out there, what's it going to be exactly, and there'll be a lot of discontent in Dodger land if they get bumped from the playoffs very quick. If they get bumped at any point, there's going to be a lot of discontent. Look, if the Dodgers go to the World Series and lose there, they're going to want to make some big-time moves. Anything less than a championship for the Dodgers, they're going to have to address it. They're going to address it in a big way.
Do you think they would change their philosophy if that happens? Let's play the scenario out. They play a wild card game. San Diego beats them. They're knocked out of the playoffs. Do they start following the luxury tax? Do they ease up on going after those free agents?
They break the luxury tax, and they get the best available players out there. That's why we talk about Aaron Judge with the with the Yankees. Yankees better resign Aaron Judge, because believe me, he would be on the Dodgers' radar, and they would pay him big and do what it took to get him. And listen, even if the Dodgers win the World Series, they don't care about the luxury tax. They're going to continue to make some big moves, continue to pay the big money. And the Yankees were villains for doing something like that years ago under George Steinbrenner. But in reality, the Dodgers are doing the same, exact things. The question is, are other teams going to follow? Are other teams going to want to make bold moves? Look, the San Diego Padres have given us every indication they're willing to bid big on the free agent market, and they're probably going to do that in the offseason. And, of course, the Dodgers' neighbors, the LA Angels, with Artie Moreno, their owner, they've always signed, big-name free agents when they have the chance. And listen, Steve Cohen's with all his billions. I'm sure the Mets are going to make a big move. And the Yankees are the Yankees. If this season ends disappointingly, and when I say disappointingly, even if they're a wild card team, they get bumped quickly, they don't make a serious playoff run, they're going to make a bold move. I mean, the public outcry is going to be so great. I can't see the Yankees standing pat or just making minor adjustments.
Yeah, I would hope that's true. I would hope that the Yankees, if they do get bumped, make some major move, especially in the starting pitching area, because God knows they need that. So we're going to take a quick break, folks. We'll be back on the other side. Hopefully our guest, he messaged me, he said he'll be in. Chris Smith, boxing author, Jack knows pretty well. I may have to pop out for a few, but I will be back in, take care of some stuff. So we'll take our next break, and we'll be back on the other side, hopefully with Chris Smith. So stay with us, folks. Last break for the day, and we'll be back right after these messages. I got so much stuff on my board, Jack. I complain about it all the time, but my God, I don't know. I don't even know how I do this anymore. This is ridiculous. I'm always looking for.
So it's the commercial break, Mac. I got to get up and this is like our 7th inning stretch.
It sure is. So we got to get there, Jack.
Stretch, we call it.
We'll be right back after this, folks.
Hi, Grandma. What's for dinner?
Hey, honey, I'm making stew tonight.
Ooh, can Nina come over?
I'm not sure about our new friend. I wonder if there's been any drinking going on. Alcohol at her age can lead to so many bad things. I've been meaning to ask you, what would happen if someone offered you a drink?
Grandma?
This is hard. She's so young, but I know I need to talk to her about it now before someone tries to give her alcohol. If anyone ever does offer you a drink, I want you to say no. I have too much respect for my family, and I don't want to get in trouble.
Okay.
Really?
I promise, Grandma. I love you too.
Okay, how about tasting the stew and telling me what you think?
Some children may try alcohol as young as 9 years old. It's not too early to talk about drinking. For tips on how to begin the conversation, visit underagedrinking.samhsa.gov. That's underagedrinking.samhsa.gov. This message brought to you by SAMHSA and this station.
If you served honorably in our nation's armed forces and you're looking for a way to continue serving your fellow veterans in your community, then join AMVETS. Each year, AMVETS members volunteer millions of hours at VA healthcare facilities from coast to coast, helping to improve the lives of their fellow veterans through the VA Voluntary Services Program. AMVETS posts and departments also participate in a wide variety of community service projects, ranging from Americanism in our schools to supporting the Special Olympics and Boy Scouts of America. If you no longer wear the uniform today, you can still serve through the AMVETS by joining today at amvets.org.
When you hear the word asthma, you probably think of shortness of breath, coughing, or inhalers. Lots of things can trigger asthma, but the fact is that asthma doesn't just attack, it can kill. But with proper medical management, asthma is controllable. If you experience shortness of breath, wheezing, tightness in your chest, or persistent nighttime coughing, you may have asthma. See your doctor and get the facts. You'll breathe easier. For more information, call 211 Info Line. A message from the Connecticut Department of Public Health, keeping Connecticut healthy.
If you talk and they will hear you every single time.
Now we're getting killed.
Yeah, well, Kyle's not here.
How come?
Kicked off the team. Didn't Tim tell you? Kyle and some other kids got caught drinking beer in the park a couple of nights ago.
Really?
Yeah. Zero tolerance. He's out for the season.
Come on, it's a first offense, right?
That we know of.
So
Yeah, well, a lot of kids don't try it too. I'm not saying that Matt's going to be this perfect kid, but if I don't tell him what we expect and why he shouldn't drink, how's he going to know?
you think kids that age really listen?
They never admit it, though, but they hear more than you think.
Talk. They hear you. For more information about talking with kids about underage drinking, visit underagedrinking.samhsa.gov.
Hello?
Hey, is that you, Chris?
Yeah, this is me. Can you see me on there?
Can't see you at all.
Okay.
I can hear you clearly, but we'd let you know our listeners out there, viewers, would love to see you. Mac actually is the producer with Mac and Linda there, so they're controlling the board as far as getting you on. Chris, you hear me now? Okay, I guess I'll carry it myself, Chris, until you get on. Those watching, I'm not Chris Smith, boxing author. Okay, we had Chris a while ago. I might have to do this intro twice when Chris is on, but Chris wrote a book on Etta Joffrey or Jaffa. I'm going to go over with Chris how you pronounce his name, who was the greatest Brazilian fighter of all time. And it might not impress a lot of people to hear about, Etta Joffrey in itself, because that'll just, unless you're a very hardcore boxing fan, you won't know who Etta Joffrey was. But he was absolutely an all-time great. And I had the pleasure in 1992 of interviewing Etta Joffrey when he got inducted into the International Boxing Hall of Fame. It was arranged by the great boxing historian Hank Kaplan, and he took me to Etta Joffrey's room where Etta Joffrey was with his son Marcel, and we talked like a long, long time. I mean, what a lovely man, so smart. And when I was with Etta Joffrey, I felt like I was with boxing royalty. And he was boxing royalty, Etta Joffrey, and he still is. Etta Joffrey, over his career, won 72 fights, lost 2 fights, fought 4 draws, had 50 stoppages, and his 2 losses were to the same guy, a Hall of Famer from Japan, fighting Harada, who won the world bantamweight title off Etta Joffrey, and then on a disputed decision, very close, and then beat him in a close fight in a rematch. And what I always found intriguing about Etta Joffrey when I was a kid was how he was rated by the Ring magazine editor, Nat Fleischer. Now, Nat Fleischer, unless you're a hardcore boxing fan, you won't know who Nat Fleischer is. But Nat Fleischer was really the most famous media member of all time. He discovered Ring magazine, and he had such unbelievable clout in the 20s, the 30s, the 40s, the 50s, the 60s. And then Nat Fleischer passed away in 1972. Nat Fleischer had all-time ratings in all the divisions. And at that time, we're talking about 8 weight classes, not the 17 we have today. The flyweight, the bantamweight, the featherweight, the lightweight, the welterweight, the middleweight, the light heavyweight, and the heavyweight. And Nat Fleischer was hopelessly addicted to the old-timers. I mean, the modern guys he had absolutely no use for. And to say Nat Fleischer was biased towards old-timers was a gross, understatement. An example could be, and it's all-time top 10 heavyweights, he had Joe Louis rated, I think, number 6. He didn't even have Muhammad Ali in the top 10, but this was 1972. The great Sugar Ray Robinson was rated number 5 at middleweight. Okay, that'll give you an idea. But what I've always found intriguing and fascinating was in the number 4 position amongst the bantamweights was Etta Joffrey. That was the one modern guy in Nat Fleischer's time he gave big respect to. Number 4, Etta Joffrey. And I always wondered whether that was legitimate, knowing Fleischer's contempt for the modern guys of his time, whether Ring magazine in Fleischer's later years slipped that in, or whether Fleischer genuinely felt that way. But I have to believe those were Fleischer's legitimate ratings. But as I said, like in 1992, Sir Etta Joffrey is inducted into the Hall of Fame. And I'm at his room talking, very bright man. He's a politician in Brazil as well. And I remember a buddy of mine, Jack Obermeyer, the late Jack Obermeyer, he absolutely idolized Etta Joffrey. He had posters of him. And when he found out I was interviewing Etta Joffrey, he came to the room, he came by. And Etta Joffrey, signed his poster. And Etta Joffrey was really flattered. And this was in the days before social media. He would have such a fan like Jack Obermeyer who would idolize him. And he was a plain guy, a simple guy. I remember the officials from the Hall of Fame, they come by Eddie Joffrey's room. Where do you want to go for dinner? It was their job to take out some of the honorees. And Eddie Joffrey says, I want to go for pizza. Plain pizza, that's all he wanted to go for. Not a steak dinner, plain pizza. And I remember the closeness he had with his son, Marcel. Now, with Eddie Joffrey, too, okay, those fighting Harada fights, in which he lost the title, Eddie Joffrey, I was under the impression, well, maybe he was complaining like any other fighter. You lose your title in a close decision, and of course you're going to complain you were robbed. But I remember touching upon the rematch he had where Harada won a decision, and Joffrey didn't complain about the decision. He just shrugged like it was fair. And I started looking up the second fight, and the scoring was close in Harada's favor. In fact, United Press International had it scored a draw. So if Joffrey was a whiner, he was a complainer, in any way, shape, or form, wouldn't he have complained about the second fight as well? Said he was robbed, this or that. And I did watch the tape eventually, not the second Joffrey Harada fight, but the first one. Okay, the first fight between the two. And Harada gets off to a good start, but Joffrey really comes on late in the fight. And it's obvious it's a close fight. And to me, it certainly looked like Joffrey, had done enough to hold on to his title. And more than his title, it was his unbeaten run. He never lost the fight. But the fight's in Japan, Harada's hometown. And listen, it was a close fight. So I'm not saying it was a hometown decision, not at all. But it was interesting that they had a Japanese judge and he scored for Harada. He scored it close. And listen, if we watched the fight all and looked at it objectively, yeah, we could come to the conclusion that Harada legitimately won that fight. Or we could say Joffrey won the fight. And that's boxing. I mean, we hear too often when there's a close fight that one fighter got robbed. The term robbed, is overused, and I can't take it seriously anymore. There have been a lot of fights where I had one fighter winning 7 rounds to 5, no knockdowns. So with point totals, it would be 115, 113, and it would be called a draw. The official decision would be called a draw, like in the recent Jamel Charlo fight, Brian Castano. They call that fight a draw, even though, and I had Charlo a couple of points down, and people are saying, oh, it was, a robbery. Charlo got a gift, but it was close enough to be a draw, whether the opinion said that or not. And I think that's the way it was in the Joffrey fights, with fighting Harada. Listen, Joffrey had the 2 draws as well. I said his record was 72, 2-4. His 2 draws are with a terrific fighter, Ernesto, at that time, Ernesto Miranda. And after the 2 draws, Joffrey fought Miranda twice more and beat him in those fights. And some of the fighters that Joffrey fought, they were truly outstanding. They were, Johnny Caldwell, Jose Medal, Bernardo Carabello. They were like really top of the line contenders. Joffrey didn't fight any slouches at all. But getting back to the first Harada fight, Joffrey seemed to be bitter about that decision when he was talking to me way back in 92. And I wonder whether the author Chris Smith, when he did his phenomenal research on this book, whether he came across my story in 1992 in Boxing News. I saw on social media this morning, Chris Smith listed 400 pages of interviews he was doing about Eddie Joffrey for this book. So it was like so well researched. But one of the beefs that Eddie Joffrey had about losing the title to fighting Harada, was the way Harada fought. Okay, I'm on a roll, Mac. I can keep going. I'll go a little further until we get Chris Smith on.
Well, just to let you know, Jack, I'm
Yeah.
waiting on a call back, so I might have to pop out again. Chris, if you're listening out there, come back in. If you can't make video, we'll still have you on where we can hear you. So
Chris Smith better make it today because I'm emptying the tank with Ed Joffrey today, and I'm not adding it. I'm not doing a repeat on this.
No,
so
I'm saying if he's listening, if he's listening right now, pop back in. We'll even take you on a call. Let's see what we got. Can you hear me? Chris asked if you can hear me. Let me bring you up, Chris. Chris, can you hear us now?
Yeah, I can hear you both. I've heard everything. It's just that
don't worry.
It's giving me like an error message, but
you've heard what I've said, right?
Exactly, the whole thing. Yeah.
Yeah, you never came across my story in 1992, did you? By any chance?
For boxing news?
Yeah.
I believe I did probably early in the research.
Yeah. I mean, how do you pronounce his name? Is it Jaffa or Joffrey? Joffrey, yeah, that's the way I always said it. Some people said Jaffa and so on. And I was about to mention him having lost the title to fighting Harada. One of Joffrey's complaints was the referee, Barney Ross, was too slow to take control. And Barney Ross would pass away soon after. And he felt Barney Ross was somewhat ill, at that time, wasn't his old self. But what was phenomenal about Ed Joffrey, and then I'm going to let you take over, what I think impressed me more than anything in his career, after losing the title, he had retired a while, I believe, and then he went on a run. The last 25 fights of his career after that, he won and would win the world featherweight title, and he really beat good fighters, Jose Lagra, Vicente Saldivar. So Joffrey, one of the all-time greats as far as I'm concerned.
Absolutely. Yeah, I mean, with the Harada fight, if you watch the fight, he shows great sportsmanship in the ring. And Harada himself said that that's a moment he's never going to forget for the rest of his life. The fact that, must have been difficult for Joffrey to accept that he lost his title, he lost his unbeaten record, but he just came up to him, he picked him up, and he congratulated him. And Harada I've spoke to Harada, through a connection in Japan, and he always just lights up when Joffrey's name's mentioned, just for obviously the person he was and the sportsmanship and the fighter that he was as well. My connection in Japan will tell me that Harada's memory is kind of fading. He, sometimes he's a little grumpy, but as soon as he forgets things. As soon as he mentions Joffrey's name, he'll talk for 30 minutes straight. So he obviously had an effect on Harada. His dad, Kid Joffrey, complained a lot more than Eder did at the time. But I think once Eder had time to reflect on the fight and the handling of the fight by Barney Ross, because he thought Harada got away with kind of clinching too much, a lot of leading with his head. So I think he was kind of surprised by the fact that those tactics were allowed to continue. And go ahead.
Joffrey told me when I spoke with him in '92. Okay, and the year he lost the title to Harada was what, about
65?
Yeah. 65, you said?
Yeah.
He seemed to be, really, I don't want to use the word bitter about the decision, upset. He was adamant he won the fight. He said afterwards, everyone in Japan would come up to him in the street and telling him that, like, he beat Harada. And of course, whenever a champion loses on a close decision, he's going to feel he definitely won the fight. He was hard done. But what I always found interesting, he had no complaints to me about the rematch with Harada. Yeah. I said, do you think you legitimately lost to Harada the rematch? And he just shrugged like, yeah, Harada deserved the decision in the rematch. And from what at least looking at the official scoring of the rematch, it was close. And the UPI had it a draw. So you'd think if he was a whiner, Joffrey would say, well, the rematch was close. It could have gone either way. but he seemed to acknowledge that he believed it was the correct decision in the rematch.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, and it seems like at the first fight, most of the Japanese press and the fans, it does appear, even from reports at the time and even years later, they do believe that Joffrey won the fight. Even Harada himself, it was like, I won the fight, and I don't know how. He basically doesn't believe he won the first fight, is what it seems like. Personally, like you said earlier, it's a really close fight. Could go either way. Kind of went to the hometown guy. On the second fight, the close fight, could go either way. But because of the way Harada finished strong, it's hard to take it away from him, especially at home. But yeah, they're both really, really close fights. I mean, I think Harada's style obviously presented a lot of problems for Joffrey, because Joffrey would normally bomb out the brawlers. He fought Aoki a couple years earlier, and he fought similar, came on just attacking, gave him problems for 2 rounds, and then he got knocked out. Usually it would take him a few rounds to adjust to a guy like that, and he'd just bomb him out. So Harada, I think the fact that Harada then could use his footwork, because Harada had some of the best feet in boxing history, and also had a great jab as well. I think he's one of the great jabbers. You never hear him mentioned with the likes of Larry Holmes and fighters like that as having the best, but his jab is phenomenal too. And I think that surprised Joffrey, and I think his superior footwork kept him off balance and made it hard for Joffrey to land, punches and bunches against him. So that's why he was such a difficult fight.
What made you decide to write a book on Eddie Joffrey, which is very welcome, of course, because he's an all-time great, and I don't know of any other books that have been out on him?
Yeah, well, there had been a couple of written in Portuguese back in 1962. There was a famous one, and then they did a re-edition after he retired. That was in '77. They did that one. But for me, basically, when I was a teenager and I was reading through the International Boxing Hall of Fame register, so it has all the records of every fighter ever. And I just never seen a Brazilian boxer, and I read his profile, and I'm like, he sounds interesting. And also, being the fact that he was a vegetarian, I looked at his numbers, and I just noticed that not many guys from that era had unbeaten streaks that went. His first 50 fights unbeaten, his last 25 unbeaten. So I just thought, he must have been pretty good to make his mark like that. So I just started researching him then, collecting what videos I could. And over time, I just had so much information and material on him to the point where a lot of people would ask me, a lot of questions about his career and, told me to write a book about him. And I was like, what? Yeah, why not? I got some time on the side to do it, and I kind of just went with it. And I just thought he was a fighter that deserved a book. And I guess if it hadn't been written up to this point, it wasn't going to get written. So it's kind of like that, really.
Yeah, Chris, comebacks in boxing by great champions like Joffrey are rarely successful. But him returning to the ring and winning his last 25 fights, winning the world featherweight title, and, beating some good fighters along the way, some very good fighters. Would you rate that as one of the great comebacks in boxing history, maybe the greatest comeback in boxing history?
Yeah, I think I would say so. Yeah, I mean, I think George Foreman obviously is an obvious choice for a lot of people.
You're right. George Foreman's was unique. One of the greatest.
And he won the heavyweight title, but he also lost a number of fights too. And he didn't look as good as what Joffrey looked when he fought, and I think it's almost as hard to be a 37, 40-year-old featherweight than it is a 40 to 45-year-old heavyweight. So I would say for the consistency and the dominance and the unbeaten streak, I would probably have to say Joffrey is number one. I know Lee Groves is somebody that's always said that Joffrey's comeback's probably the best of all time as well.
Oh, very interesting. And Lee knows his stuff.
Exactly.
Yeah. Nat Fleischer had Joffrey the 4th greatest bantamweight of all time. And was that a legitimate rating by Fleischer? Did the people in Ring Magazine put it in, in Fleischer's ratings because Fleischer was getting on in years? Because it was out of character for Nat Fleischer to rate a modern guy so highly. Like I said before, Even Sugar Ray Robinson was no higher than number 5 at middleweight at the time. And we're talking before Marvin Hagler, Carlos Monzon came along. And Joe Louis, I think he was rated number 6, the 6th greatest heavyweight of all time by Fleischer. To just put it in perspective, yet Joffrey, who was there towards the end of Fleischer's life, was rated number 4. Was that a legitimate rating? What's the deal on that? Do you know?
It would appear so. And also Fleischer, he was at the Joffrey fight against Rollo when he won the ring belt, and he presented him after the fight. So he always had good things to say about him. He also judged the fight against Arias in Venezuela. And he always spoke really highly of him and put him up there with the all-time greats. He would always mention, I think he compared him to Benny Leonard, was a fighter that he compared him to for the brains that he had in the ring. So it would appear that the rating's accurate. And also, why would the ring pick Joffrey out as that kind of that modern guy to put up there when they could have done that with Robinson? They could have done that with Monzon, who was a little more famous. I mean, Joffrey never fought on U.S. TV. His fight was never broadcast on U.S. radio. So I don't think there was much investment in advertising him as this all-time great.
If Joffrey were fighting today, is there anyone that you would perhaps compare him to? Would it be, let's say, a Lomachenko, for example? What would Joffrey's caliber be today? Obviously, he would be elite. We know that. But is there anyone in particular who you might compare him to?
You know what? They're probably, I haven't really thought to compare him like stylistically. I guess naturally because he's a bantamweight. The Japanese guy Inoue might be, but not really. Inoue is more of
an explosive puncher. Joffrey was more of a master boxer.
Well, yeah, a master boxer who was explosive, but he was always patient. Whereas Inoue is kind of every punch he's putting, like he's putting everything behind every punch. Joffrey's style was a little bit more, he'd kind of probe a little bit more. He'd let the opponent expose themselves a little bit more, and then he would explode on them. But styles-wise, no. I mean, I think Joffrey, he would benefit in today's age because in the 60s, there was no super bantamweight class. So if he would have had a super bantamweight division to go to, he probably would never fight Harada because he was already, realistically, Joffrey almost didn't make the weight for the Meadow fight in 1960, the Eliminator. He struggled to make weight for the Caldwell fight. He really was struggling to make the weight in 2-3 years before the Harada fight. Even after he switched up his training and his diet, he just couldn't make the weight anymore. So I think if there was a super bantamweight division, he probably would have moved up there a couple of years earlier, and maybe he then goes the whole 78 fights unbeaten.
Joffrey had to wait till his 3rd year of eligibility to get in the Hall of Fame, which maybe sounds worse than it is because the Hall of Fame started inducting fighters in 1990. So you had the greatest of all time going in on the first ballot. Okay, that was open to everyone. And then you had 91, and then he got in 92. Was he maybe a little more worthy of than waiting for the 3rd year of eligibility? Should he have gotten in maybe the 1st, the 2nd year? Or was it because he's from Brazil and didn't have that American link, let's say, like an Emil Griffith had?
Yeah, I think it's just because of where he came from and Brazil not really having a big voice. And then, like I said, because he didn't fight, on U.S. TV, U.S. radio, his only fights on U.S. soil were in California. So I just think that, he probably slipped under the radar then. The same way I think Olivares missed out the first year, Salvador Sanchez, Carlos Ortiz. I think those guys were all first ballot too. When I look at the first ballot, no disrespect to them, but I think Joffrey stacks up favorably with,
Oh, I got to tell you a funny story, Chris. This is great stuff. I'm very friendly with Gene Aguilera, who always brings Ruben Olivares to Canastota for the International Boxing Hall of Fame weekend. So we'd always be joking around with Ruben, even though there was a language barrier, we would laugh, we would joke. And we would joke around with him, well, Chucho Castillo could have beaten you. Ruben would laugh about that, even though he was arch enemies with Castillo. We'd have a lot of fun. So I introduced him to Jack Obermeyer, who former writer, the late Jack Obermeyer, who absolutely idolized Etta Joffrey. And Obermeyer would like to joke with Oliveras, and Oliveras would laugh. And all of a sudden, they're getting into a serious discussion. Obermeyer's telling him, you could have beaten this guy, that guy. You never would have beaten Etta Joffrey. And he's serious. And you could tell the competitiveness in Oliveras is coming out. And they're starting to actually argue a little bit. So it's kind of like funny to see. Your book, how do people get it?
They can get it on Amazon, Barnes & Noble. I mean, those are the two main places you can get it. I think if you even just Google the Etta Joffrey book, I think even places like eBay, Target, Walmart have it. But the main places are Amazon and Barnes & Noble.
I'll tell you, Chris, I mean, we all get older. I remember going into Joffrey's room to interviewing him and hanging out there with him and his son, a couple other people in 1992. And now you see the recent pictures close to 30 years ago. I'm sure if he saw a picture of me, he'd be astounded how much older I get. But when you look at yourself in the mirror every day, you don't notice yourself aging.
Yeah.
You're still the same young guy as before, because
Absolutely.
it goes day by day. But when you have one look after all the years, and it kind of jolted me, a little bit. What kind of shape is he in today? Is he sharp mind-wise?
Not particularly. I speak to his son and his daughter like almost daily.
His son Marcel?
Marcel, yeah, and Marcel's wife and Andrea, his daughter. So because we're bringing Etta Joffrey is going to be out here in California next month. So I communicate a lot with him. He's fine. I mean, he's as good as an 85-year-old could be because he's maintained that vegetarian diet.
He's 85 now. Okay.
Yeah, he still works out. It's just after his wife passed away in 2013, he had a bit of a breakdown, and I think a lot of issues. And then the issues that he had from his, getting punched in the head, I think a lot of that kind of came together at the same time. So he's on certain medication, but he's as far as an 85-year-old old fighter, he's doing fine in that sense.
He's coming from Brazil to California. Tell us the details of that.
Yeah, so how that kind of worked out was I'd been communicating with his family for a number of years. And a few years ago, I just didn't think it was possible that he could come. But I was speaking to him and his daughter on FaceTime once, and I was in Vegas, and he noticed the background, and he started saying, like, boxing. He's like, Mike Tyson, muchas lutas, like lots of fights. And so I asked his daughter, I was like, when is the last time he'd been into America? And she said it'd been a long time, but he always asks about wanting to come back because he loves America. He loved being at the Hall of Fame. He loved California. He's just really, really into America, American culture, and the recognition that he got from boxing here. So she just said, I just didn't really know how to go about this. And I'm like, well, if I could work something out, we could do anything to bring him over to at least see where he won the world title at the Olympic Auditorium or maybe back to the Hall of Fame. Is that something he'd be up for? So she said, yeah. So as I was doing the book, I started doing fundraising. So one thing that we were offering was basically signed gloves that Joffrey would personalize to people, signed photographs. Some people donated. And we got to a point where, we had the funds available to bring them out here. So he's going to be out here. And Rick Farris of the West Coast Boxing Hall of Fame, he's a huge Joffrey fan. He puts him in the top 10 boxers of all time, pound for pound. And Rick really knows the lightweight, the lighter weight divisions and thinks Joffrey is the best of the lighter weight divisions. He said, is it possible to bring Joffrey out here so I can induct him? And I actually told him, plans are already in motion for him to come out.
Yeah, Chris, we have, the 2-minute warning came up. Again, fill us in on the book. You mentioned someone could get it at Amazon, Barnes & Noble. Is there anything in particular you want to say in closing that I didn't ask, I didn't cover, that you want to mention in regards to Etta Joffrey, one of the all-time greats?
Yeah, I mean, just that he'll be out here in Los Angeles. I have to. We still have to get them approved for a national interest exception because the government are not letting Brazilians in. But I have a backup plan in place, which will allow him to come in somehow. So yeah, look for him to be here in Los Angeles in October for the West Coast Boxing Hall of Fame induction. Probably New York next summer to Canastota. The book, Amazon, Barnes & Noble. It was the West Coast Boxing Hall of Fame Book of the Year. So yeah, the feedback's been really good so far. I know it's a long book. It's 600 odd pages. But, you know, the feedback's been really good and people have enjoyed it so far. So, yeah, that's
Chris, very, very quickly, because we're down to the last minute. So very quickly, Eddie Joffrey's name in Brazil. Is it still relevant in Brazil? Because a lot of years have gone by.
Unfortunately, Brazilians, I'm told they don't really honor the past that much. It's more of a soccer country, so it's all about soccer over there. He was probably neck and neck with Pele at his time, but now you've really got to know boxing to know
You
him.
said it best, being neck and neck with Pele. Chris, I mean, this is great, great stuff, and I know you're writing other books, so we certainly want you on, you know, in the future. And you did a phenomenal job talking about a phenomenal fighter.
Awesome. Thank you, Jack.
Okay, Chris, thanks so much for coming on.
Thanks for having me. Have a nice day.
Take care, Chris. Chris Smith, author of Eddie Joffrey, you know, Brazil's first world champion.